and welcome to the Teaching Corner. Today we're going to talk about why reading is so hard. In a previous video I talked about how the brain works when we read, and I'll put a link in the description down below. But I just want to talk to you for a few minutes about why reading is so hard and the process and where the breakdown can happen for different students. So the very first thing is our ears. When we talk about phonemic awareness, it has nothing to do with paper and pencil and books. It's all about the sounds of things and what we hear. So that's, cat, sat, bat, mat, and that's the child being able to tell that the rhyme or the vowel and the last sound are the same, but the onset or the first sound is not the same. And then bee, bat, boy, that's the ability to tell us that the very first letter is the same, but the second half of the word is not the same. So that has to do with our ears, and that's called phonemic awareness. Now a child picks up a book, and now it goes to, here's our little brain, which was in that last video, but it goes and we read it with our eyes, and it comes back here to the occipital lobe, or the back of our head. So if a child has low vision, if a child is dyslexic, and some dyslexics, the words will spin, they'll be flipped upside down, they'll be backwards. If any of that is happening, then there's visual distortion for the child as they're trying to read those. And it could be fixed if a child has low vision with going to the eye doctor and getting glasses, and it may be something that is never going to be fixed if the words are swimming around. I had one person who said that they literally had to just memorize whatever the letters were, the group of letters made up this particular word, because milk could be M-I-L-K or M-K-I-L. They never knew exactly how it was going to swim around for them. So we could have an auditory problem, we could have a visual problem, and then if it goes correctly, it should come over here to the left side of the brain, to the Wernicke's area, where we're going to break words apart. So that's a child's ability to look at the word cat and go k-a-t. If a child is throwing that word over to the right side of the brain, they're either seeing that entire word as one visual picture and just memorizing the word, or they may be taking that and connecting it to a picture that they have in their brain of a cat. But remember, we want them to be able to throw it over here so that they can pull the word apart, and then it goes to the Broca's area where they put it all together. So a good example of this is if you have a child that's reading k, at, s, at, n, at, and we've all had students like that, but at the very end they can't go back and read the cat sat on the mat. The length of time and their fluency at that point is so slow that they don't comprehend. They're going to have no idea what the sentence says at the end of the sentence. So if we have a student who can do all of those things and then they pronounce it wrong, it may not affect their comprehension of the story, but it definitely will affect their spelling. I try to always remind people that students will spell what they hear themselves say. So if a child is saying van, but they're saying ban with the B instead of a V, they're going to spell it B-A-N because they've learned the B sound and they're hearing the B sound from themselves, even if I as the teacher are dictating van. So we may have articulation errors. So you can have everything from auditory to visual to speech errors to also how their brain is working and pulling apart and putting those words back together. Then let's say we have a student who can do that. They can read all of the words, but their fluency is really, really slow. Even if they're not as bad as the first student, if they get to the end of the sentence and they can't tell me what the sentence said, or maybe it's for some students it's a whole paragraph and they don't remember what they've read, or maybe it's a page if we're reading a chapter book and they get to the end of the page and they can't tell me what was in the story. Now we have a student who possibly needs to increase their fluency, but they may also be having trouble making a visual picture in their head. And I'll do a future video on a program that's great for helping students with that. but they may be having a difficulty making that little video in their mind so that they can follow the story. And if they're not doing that, then that's going to hurt their comprehension. And then finally, even if our student is doing that, they're able to pull the words apart and put them together. We can read fluently. We comprehend the literal meaning of the book. As students get older into middle school and high school and upper elementary, they're being asked not just the plot line of the story, but they're being asked to make connections. They're being asked things like conflict and theme and tone and author's purpose and all of these different things. So if you have a student who's a very literal learner, they're gonna have some problems with these higher order thinking skills. I didn't have any difficulty in elementary school. I was reading on a 12th grade reading level, but I wasn't comprehending on a 12th grade reading level. I could read all the words, I could fly through a book, but I did not pick up the figurative language. I did not pick up some of the nuances or what was being said that wasn't written on the page. And for some of our students, that has to be directly taught because they don't know how to do that for themselves. Now that I've been taught through years and years of practice, I can do that a lot better by myself. But as a student, I struggled with those kinds of things. So testing students on all of these various things, phonemic awareness, whether or not they can say it fluently, whether or not they can put it together and pull it apart, and their comprehension is all really important, because on a standardized test, they're just graded on that comprehension skill. But as a tutor or teacher of these kids, we need to know where it's breaking down for them so that we can teach them the right skills so that they can be successful. I hope that was helpful. If it was, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye!